We are now ready to talk about the disastrous and humiliating aftermath of the House Speaker fiasco. Now, I don't know how many of you followed it closely over the weekend. I did not. After vote number 7, I guess, on Friday or whatever day it was, I just checked out and said, I'm sure by Monday we will have figured out what happened. And indeed we have. Kevin McCarthy was indeed elected Speaker of the House eventually on the 15th round of voting. And it all became a farce. It all became a joke. There was a physical altercation on the House floor in which Republican members were grabbing each other. It's completely surreal that this is what happened. Marjorie Taylor Greene now, as a result, is like abandoning QAnon, and then the QAnon people are furious with Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's 4, 5, or 6 different layers of absurdity that now are following what happened on the floor of the House of Representatives. But they have a speaker, okay, and it's Kevin McCarthy. And one of the things we have to recognize, and I mean, ideally they would recognize it in the Republican Party, I'm not sure they do, is that they have weakened the speakership to its weakest point, certainly in the decades that many of us have been following politics, people who are roughly my age. This is now a speakership that is more of a joke than it has ever been before. This is a speakership that is weaker in terms of its ability and power at coalescing consensus between even their own party. And you don't need to look very far to see how quickly this entire thing became a joke. Shortly after the big win for Kevin McCarthy, he announced the very first thing that they would be doing. And listen to what it was.
I know the night is late, but when we come back, our very first bill will repeal the funding for 87,000 new hours.
And there's Marjorie Taylor Greene clapping. Yeah, like just painfully stupid. Now, I've already debunked the whole thing about the IRS agents. I'm not going to do it now because it's not the point. But we have so many different and important issues in this country that we could be working towards fixing. And the idea that the American people would even remotely benefit from that as opposed to anything else is laughable. One other funny moment, when it was announced that Donald Trump got 1 vote during one of the votes for Speaker, I believe it was Matt Gaetz, the entire room just laughs.
The Honorable Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 1.
Yeah. It really is a joke. The entire thing has turned into a joke. And obviously, it was also political drama of the highest order. It got clicks, it got ratings. But the entire speaker fiasco really, at the end of the day, is an exercise in extreme irony. And one of our subreddit users, Wrong Sir Wrong, pointed out a lot of the ways in which this was extraordinarily ironic. So I'm going to use their post as a jumping off point here to talk more about this. The 20 House members who initially defected, for lack of a better term, in a way, they are the ones standing by their principles, in the sense that they are some of the most insane and extreme members of the House. Kevin McCarthy was very much willing to trade votes for power or influence, and he did it based on what we've been told with committee assignments and with other things. Those 20, to the extent that they stuck it out, they weren't willing to trade assignments or whatever for votes because they thought that Kevin McCarthy was a terrible candidate. Now, the reason they thought that is because McCarthy isn't nearly as extreme as they are, right? So we have to understand that's really bonkers, but they at least had some principle where so many of these other people have absolutely no principles whatsoever. That's been a theme of the last many years. These Republicans sort of claim to have values, but they really don't. It's whatever values are convenient to them at the time. And as soon as those values are inconvenient or inconsistent with getting what they need in terms of power, they abandon the values. We saw this 180 that Marjorie Taylor Greene did. Marjorie Taylor Greene, after years of portraying herself as I'm anti-establishment, I'm not a sellout, I'm against rhinos, all of this stuff. She does a 180 and she supports Kevin McCarthy, who is the Republican establishment, because it seems as though McCarthy promised her a sliver of influence if he wins, and she's going to get back on some committee assignments and whatever else the case may be. That's extraordinarily ironic, and another example of how they don't really have principles. Marjorie Taylor Greene's principles are really the creation of a character that she believes will be a character that can gain power and influence. Also, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been criticizing defecting Republicans for not playing ball and wanting attention. But that's exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene did to get herself to where she is now. She has been the epitome of the attention seeker. And now she's criticizing others for trying to get attention. We're going to look at an interview later in which Marjorie Taylor Greene actually says this. All these holdouts were just trying to get attention. Well, everything you've done has been to get attention. And now all of a sudden you're getting attention because you say that they're doing the wrong thing and you're doing the right thing. And then Kevin McCarthy, of course, by appeasing Marjorie Taylor Greene, now creates a generation of Marjorie Taylor Greene wannabes in Congress who will make a show out of obstructing as much as possible and then eventually coming to the table, getting something, some crumbs in the negotiations, and subsequently getting power. First, you yell to get attention. Then you say, well, you're going to want to make me go away. Give me some power. And so now that's going to encourage more and more people to do that. And then lastly, as pointed out by this user on our subreddit, Wrong Sir Wrong, for years and years, McCarthy groveled to Trump. He wanted Trump to endorse him for the speakership, groveling. Trump did the endorsement, sort of half-heartedly at the end of the day, if we're honest, but Trump did the endorsement. But it turns out that endorsement didn't even get McCarthy the speakership. Trump did the endorsement on, I think it was Wednesday night, and many more votes in which McCarthy lost. Eventually, it was a different sort of negotiation that got McCarthy the speakership. So it's another sign of how, through his endorsement, we actually notice that Trump is even more weakened than we previously thought. And it's irony all the way down, quite frankly. This is a very inauspicious start for the next 2 years. And we know they're going to go after Joe Biden. We know they're going to go after Hunter Biden. We know they're going to obstruct everything they can. And so now Democrats are going to have to think long and hard, to use Donald Trump's phrase, about what is the best way to get the most possible out of the next 2 years and to mitigate damage to the extent that they can. One of our sponsors today is Fume. Fume is on a mission to accelerate humanity's breakup from the bad habits that consume far too many of us, including ones that harm our health. Fume is a natural diffusive device that uses plants and behavioral science to trade out your negative habit for a positive one. Fume is not a vape. It's a non-electronic device designed to transform your negative habits. Instead of pods filled with potentially harmful chemicals like a vape, Fume uses cores infused with plants like peppermint and cinnamon for delicious natural flavors. Fume's new version 2 model is snappy and tactile with an adjustable airflow dial and a magnetic end cap that's fun to fidget with. It's Fume's goal to make switching easy or even enjoyable. They have thousands of 5-star reviews from people just like you who have successfully switched when other solutions didn't work. Head to tryfume.com and use the code PACMAN to get 10% off today when you get the Journey Pack, which comes with 3 unique flavors and the new version 2 Fume. The link is down below.